We have to know that God sees us through all that. He's not just sitting up there waiting and saying, okay, get it together. I know you know what you're supposed to do. Come on.
I was trying to do God a favor. I didn't want to give God a bad rep. So I wanted to be a smiley Christian and be positive, even though there were probably some tough times. But I didn't focus on those. I'd never processed the things that were difficult.
He's got us. Our trust in the Lord is accumulative. It's actually easier for me now because I just know him so well.
Welcome to Called Beyond, a Novo mission podcast. We love sharing stories of how God calls ordinary people into his extraordinary mission. In this third season, our theme is Courageously Take Root. Jesus invites us to be deeply grounded in him so that our lives bear lasting fruit. Fruit that multiplies far beyond what we could produce ourselves. Together, we'll explore stories of courage from Scripture and from today, learning what it looks like to take root in God's love and live boldly for his kingdom. Well, welcome everybody to another episode of the Called Beyond podcast. I'm your host, Tim Schuck, and man, I am joined by two of the most amazing guests I would say that we have ever had. No offense to any of the other guests that we've ever had. And I am so excited to introduce you guys to two pioneers, two faithful Novo missionaries who have been a part of this journey way longer than I have. I'm joined by the lovely Myra Perrine, who has been with Novo for 30 years. And has, just helped develop so many resources. She has trained and mentored so many people that have inspired and actually mentored me, and resides in the wonderful Redding, California, and just recently got to go snowshoeing with her grandkids, her daughter, and just enjoy playing with the snow. On the other side of my screen, I'm looking at the wonderful Steve Hoke, who is calling in from South Florida, where it is always 75 and sunny. And man, Steve and Myra have served together for a really long time. Steve actually has been with Novo for 35 years, both being able to still read 2 books a week and has countless thousands of books in his library. And we look so forward to learning from him. These guys have been developing staff resources. They've been writing books. And they have really been just giving away all of the things that the Lord has built and stored in them for so many decades. And we are so thankful to have them both on the podcast today. Welcome, you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Good to be here.
Well, one of the things I love about this season is getting to just throw out some amazing verses from Scripture and allow that to be the starting point where we get to reflect back and just see where these verses take us in your guys' shared journey, in your guys' individual journeys, and even as you think and look forward to what God has for you in the future, how this might shape the rest of life and things that we can learn from today. So the verses that we get to share together today and discover parts of our story is from Jeremiah chapter 17, verses 7 and 8 from the NLT. But blessed are those who trust in the Lord and have made the Lord their hope and confidence. They are like trees planted along a riverbank with roots that reach deep into the water. Such trees are not bothered by the heat or worried by long months of drought. Their leaves stay green, and they never stop producing fruit. Well, Myra, I want to start with you. Is there anything that just, as you hear those familiar verses, that just jump off the page at you?
Yeah, I think it's good to know that we are going to go through times of drought and heat, and life is going to get hard, and not just on the outside, but on the inside. There's times where we're going to go through seasons of depression. I know I had my left knee replaced a couple years ago, and for about 6 months, it was even hard for me to read my Bible. I mean, I was in so much pain, 24 hours a day. I was in pain at night, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so we have to know that God sees us through all that. He's not just sitting up there waiting and saying, okay, get it together. I know you know what you're supposed to do. Come on. And that's why one of I call it my secret sauce is authenticity with ourselves and with God. We can't stray very far from being authentic with the Lord and ourselves, because we are going to go through times of drought and heat. And we need to just let those roots go down deeper. And we need to just let Him nourish us and provide for us and just trust Him. He's got us, even in those seasons. I mean, that doesn't give us an excuse to, go cuckoo, but it does give us an assurance. Our trust in the Lord is accumulative. It's actually easier for me now after I've known the Lord. Last week was my 56th spiritual birthday. And
Happy
I've known
birthday.
the Lord, and it's easier now. It's just, it sounds terrible to say, but it's easier now because I just know Him so well.
Yeah. So, Myra, I think what I'm hearing is we can expect in our life to just go from mountaintop experience to mountaintop experience, that there's a reason why there's a valley in between every mountain. And really, this verse, what you're highlighting is it is showing us that, man, we shouldn't avoid, we should expect. But the bettering of our souls, the bettering of our life really comes through those trying moments where we do experience those seasons of drought or valleys. Steve, what do you want to reflect back on as you've both read the verse and heard the verse, as well as heard Myra's initial comment?
Well, it's interesting. Several days ago, I picked out Psalm 1 related to rootedness. That obviously is the verse that Jeremiah is reflecting on, having read it in his time. And I'm not an agriculturalist. I did not grow up in a farm. I grew up in Tokyo, Japan, the world's largest city. But they grow rice in paddies. So water is very important, and they hand plant every shoot, every year, every season. So I've reflected all my life on the roots of big trees or plants. I think one of the things that drove this home. So we survived Hurricane Ian about 3.5 years ago. Our apartment got hit with winds about 145 miles an hour. Our garage was surged by a 12-foot surge of water. So we lost cars and all sorts of things. And banyan trees are very frequent here. So we had 2 huge banyan trees in front of our church, 60 feet high, 8, 15, 20-foot trunks. Both of those banyan trees went over like toothpicks, because banyan trees have very wide root systems, but they're very shallow. And so with all the foliage on top, they just blew right over it, and they're standing upside down with this huge root system exposed, but it's wide but shallow. And that was just an eye-opener to me, like, it's not how wide, it's how deep.
Yeah.
But I never realized, I think trust is the taproot of faith. And that's that main root that can go way, way, way down deep. And all these experiences we just talked about are supposed to and allowed by the Lord to take us deeper, into His love, into superabundant grace. And once we have years of having our roots, and then it's like the little stuff, it's not that we are better, it's just that I got 30, 40, I got 60 years of walking with Jesus. It's like He's never failed me. It's been tough, but usually because it's my own stupidity or stubbornness. It's not like Lord said, I forgot about Steve today. Steve, I'm so sorry. Let's get back together. And the metaphor I use, you were talking about, you're the metaphor guy. So growing up in Japan, Mount Fuji, which is one of the world's most beautiful conical volcanoes, covered with snow most of the year, but it's surrounded by lakes. So in most pictures you ever see of Mount Fuji, there's a reflection in the lake. So you see the slope going up the side of the mountain, but then you see this reflection going down. So the Lord just gave me an image years ago about the Mount Fuji of faith, that as we grow deeper in dependence on the Lord, that's as we ascend in faith. The higher we get, that really is mirrored by the deeper we go. And so it's sort of like a twin process. We only ascend as we're willing to go deeper in dependence and trust. And that has really helped me to realize, wow, it's a beautiful thing, but a lot of times the taproot is hidden, right? It's invisible. But if it's there, it's going to hold.
Yeah. Well, I'm wondering, Steve, and I love that. I feel like you could almost, and maybe this is a homework assignment for each of us. Like, I love metaphors, obviously, but I wonder if we couldn't, or you couldn't, create your own Jeremiah 17:7 and 8, or Psalm 1, where it becomes Mount Fuji, this conical volcano. You know what I mean? I think that there's a beautiful way to internalize and reflect back on what God has done, is doing, and how you would express that same principle in your life. Well, I don't want to move too far into just studying this Bible verse together without getting a chance to hear maybe a story from your own life. I know Myra referenced the hard times with having a knee replacement and, the lonely, long, painful days of that. But are there any sort of stories through the years that maybe this verse or verses kind of pull up for you as a, man, I remember this. This was a chance for my roots to grow a lot deeper, or this was a chance for, however you want to reflect back on it. What's coming to your mind as you think of something that you would want to encourage those that are listening in from the depth of your experience? And what do you want to charge them with during the time we have?
Well, let me start on that because something jumps to mind. So when I joined CRM in 91, I was a very typical male. I was 50 years old, and most of my prior life was unprocessed because I grew up thinking, well, that would be judging, or that's being judgmental of others. So I in fact was a censor that let a lot of data coming at me just go by because I thought, well, that'd be judging. So I never stopped, reflected on it. Then I really began on my first sabbatical to begin to process much of my life. So I'm a third culture kid, missionary kid from Japan. I really thought when I joined CRM, I had never suffered. I'd never had bad stuff in my life. I'd had some grandparents die, but they were on the other side of the ocean. Because I was trying to do God a favor. I didn't want to give God a bad rep. So I wanted to be a smiley Christian and be positive, even though there were probably some tough times. But I didn't focus on those. What it meant is I'd never processed the things that were difficult. So when my brother died in 96 and my grandparents died and there was pain in the family, etc., I began to realize, oh, I've had a lot of separation and pain and loss. I've just never accepted it and dealt with it honestly. Even Brene Brown's book on daring greatly was very helpful to realize, why is it we love people that are vulnerable and honest, but it's very hard for us to get there ourselves because it involves risk of daring greatly, like maybe they won't like me. And my pathology is I want to be liked. I want to be affirmed and appreciated by other people. But I was in a setting on the staff development care team where Paul, Myra, and others would probe and push me at times to say more about the loss or the difficulty. And I realized in a safe place, and they'd sort of say, like, Steve, is that all you got? Dude, that's nothing. No big deal. We accept you. We love you. And that just blew my mind because all of my fear had been anticipatory, hadn't been real, but I've been so afraid I'm going to let God down by telling it was hard or complaining or whining. I didn't want to be a whiny Christian. Wow. So I've discovered the freedom of being vulnerable and honest. Myra started with the word of genuine authenticity. And I realized that's that's the safe place, the grace-filled environment in which God intended us to grow. And I'm so thankful that at 50, God brought me into a mission agency that I thought I was here to help reach the world in the next 10 years for CRM. And he was saying, Steve, just sit down and experience my grace. Let your roots go deep into my love. It's not about performing. So that was life-changing for me.
Yeah.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, I mean, Steve, that brings up the realization you just had of trust being the taproot into his love. And I just think it's so beautiful. Like how many of us have not spent the time to process our own story? The summation of all of the things, positive and negative, that have affected us. And not to end up with a hero story with us being the victor at the end of it. But that exposure of being able to be honest and laid bare while being accepted, not condemned, I think that's where we find the victory of what Jesus really came to do for each of us is we can be as completely broken as we feel and not be judged and not be condemned, but to be restored and to be made whole and to be, man, the focus of such incredible attention and affection that we really can't perceive it, but it is so hard. It's so hard to get there and to choose to be in that position. Myra, as someone who Steve mentioned as being a part of that process in him, what does that feel like to have that reflected back in your listening?
Well, I was sitting here thinking about, something that I think we lose sight of, that God is a real person who wants a real relationship with us. Steve always says he's not an idea. He's a person, and he's real, and he wants a real relationship, just like I want a real relationship with my grandsons. I told my 10 and 13-year-old grandson, you can tell me anything. You can ask me anything, and I will be honest with you. So I loved hearing that from you, Steve. I remember those days in our staff meetings where Steve would be open and vulnerable, and the whole room was tearing up with him. And just having a place where you're loved and you're safe, and also you can have fun. You can be real, but to realize that being challenged to be more real is a gift. It's not an indictment. It's an invitation to go deeper with yourself and others and the Lord, and let that love go in like the Grand Canyon, not just a little ravine.
Yeah, I mean, as someone who has come into the Novo family from a different direction, from running a business and being in the marketplace, the thing that really wooed me was the culture of acceptance, but not cheap acceptance where there's nothing you have to do, not that tolerant acceptance where you get to do whatever you want and we're just going to smile and nod, but the type of acceptance where you are allowed and encouraged to be messy and to just let it out there without the feeling of somebody judging you, or it's completely opposite of the world and the marketplace and what I was used to. And I'm just even thinking of the team that I lead. If we have a 90-minute meeting, there are times where all of it or 2/3 of it are just spent caring for each other, hearing what's on their heart, praying together, being encouraging, all of those little pieces. And I'm having this revelatory moment where, I mean, this is a culture that you guys are speaking about cultivating 30 years ago, and how that has become a fabric. Not that it's something that you guys created, but again, to probably pun intended, tap into this kingdom reality of vulnerability, honesty, and authenticity, where all ships rise when we create that environment. And it is just so beautiful. Okay, so I'm just in reflecting back, even looking back at the passage in Jeremiah, I feel like there's probably for many of us, and I think that they can sometimes even be different, right? I think that there's, probably a trusted few, but what are the things that really anchor you to the ground? What are those tap roots, right? Steve has already reflected to us that trust really feels like a major trunk going down deep in his life. And I wonder, Myra, if trust is one of them, are there any other roots that you think that you've seen run deep in your story that can compel us forward?
Yeah. As a pretty new Christian, I was on staff with Campus Crusade for Christ. I'd only been a Christian about 2 years, and I heard a speaker talk about God's love. And I took the notes and I formulated it into a book that I called The 10 Facets of God's Love. And I think understanding the depth and breadth of God's love, I know that sounds so hokey. No, nothing about you here, Steve, but
that's Hoke, not hokey.
That's Hoke, not hokey. But I mean, it's really something we can rest in. We just rest in God's love. We receive God's love. We luxuriate in his love. Everything that flows out of us is the overflow of God's redeeming love.
That's so
you know,
good.
that just brings me down to John 15 of just abiding. Abiding is remaining, resting, receiving.
Yeah, it's being.
And apart from him, we can do nothing. And I think the verse that got to me when I was a pretty new Christian is John 15:9. He said, just as in the same way, to the same extent, the Father has loved me, so have I loved you. Abide, remain, stay in my love.
Man, we have really kind of circled the wagons on a few different points, right? And I think the great blessing of you guys sharing your life, your stories in this conversation with each of us is we really have an opportunity, I think, here to establish a way of looking in the mirror a little bit and saying, how am I doing with being honest? How am I doing it being honest with another person where I can reflect to them how I feel inside? How am I doing it being authentic, right? I think authenticity is, am I as real as I appear to be, right? And that comes from us being honest. And that takes vulnerability and even asking the Lord to bring to mind a friend where I can share the same level of honesty that I'm experiencing with myself with them in a trust building way so that this vulnerability will allow me to put down new roots and even establish new floors in that elevator of love where we can find more of God in deeper places further down to anchor us into that living water as we move forward from here. And I think we each have the opportunity to say, I want that, and I'm going to pursue that because I believe what Myra's telling me. I believe what Steve has been sharing with me today. And I hope, and our prayer here at the podcast team is that this won't be 30 minutes just to allow you to ease your commute and not be upset at the person cutting you off next to you. But this would be a place where you can choose to grow and to become more than you were at the beginning of this episode. So as we reflect back on all that we have discovered about Myra and Steve's story during our episode today, there's a couple things that really stand out to me as nuggets worth carrying forward. Just to reflect back, remember Jeremiah 17 verses 7. I think this really sums up very well what I think all of us just witnessed. Verse 7 just says, the person who trusts in the Lord, whose confidence indeed is the Lord, is blessed. And I just feel, even without all of the imagery of the tree and the water and the rootedness and all of those things, I think that reality of verse 7 is so true by what we experience today. I love how Steve reflected that trust is his taproot, where authenticity and vulnerability and having a shared experience with people that he trusts was so critical to his development and to becoming okay even in his own skin. And I also love how the Father's love and how Jesus' reflection of the Father's love towards us, how critical of a role that is for us to find hope in Jesus and how that can become the confidence that we walk through our life with together. And so, again, just to reflect to you guys, I would love to encourage you to spend some time, be it a day, be it an hour, but let it be some time where you are able to, with a mirror even, look at your own life, be honest, talk about those hard things that you've gone through, find God in it, and then find someone to share it with. Because true belonging, true love, true developing taproots happens as a result of us being in community, of us being open and honest, abiding with Jesus. And we find him abiding with us as we pursue him, don't we? Thank you guys so much for giving this a listen. Thank you so much for courageously taking root in your own life. So as we close this episode, remember, you too are called beyond. God longs to grow in you a courage that takes root, endures hardship, and produces multiplying fruit for his kingdom. So we bless you in Jesus' name. May your roots sink deep into the love of God, and may courage rise within you to say yes to his call. May the courage you've heard become contagious in your life and in every opportunity before you, so that fruit you bear multiplies for generations to come. In Jesus' name.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. Called Beyond is a production of Novo Mission Inc., a global missions organization committed to spark and sustain movements of the gospel among the nations. To learn more, we invite you to check us out on our website at novo.org or follow us at Novo Mission on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. The music in today's episode was written by the band Wild Earth and used with permission from the artist. Thank you again for giving our podcast a listen. We hope you'll join us for more Called Beyond.